All right, so today we're going to start off with Walker v. Texas Division of Confederate Veterans. And so this case is a little bit different from the cases that we've been doing traditionally. Still deals with speech, but we've shifted into governmental speech. And there are a few cases that I could use in this area, but I chose this one because first, it's the most recent, and second, Texas. So it you know it just lends itself. So what are the facts that buttress this case? Well, the Texas division of the Sons of Confederate Veterans, an organization that seeks to promote and preserve the memory of soldiers who fought in the Confederacy, applied to the Texas DMV for a vanity specialty license plate that included a couple of pictures of the Confederate flag. You can actually see it here. This is the actual, whoa, we've gone too far. Sensitive mouse. Really, we're doing this. Okay, there we go. So this is the license plate in question. Now, the DMV had a policy that it would be able to refuse any new specialty license plate um, if it was deemed offensive to any member of the public. So if any member of the public found something to be offensive, the Texas Department of Motor Vehicles could deny them the tag. So in this case, the board in question denied the tag because there were negative comments from members of the public. So the Texas Sons of Confederate Veterans sued in district court, claiming that their First Amendment rights had been violated. Um, their argument was that well that the government had engaged in what is known as viewpoint discrimination. So let's deal with what viewpoint discrimination is. Viewpoint discrimination is when a governmental entity chooses to shut down a speaker because of the content of their speech. It actually looks at what they're saying and stops it because of what they're saying. Um, Outside of national security, what we've dealt with up to this point, that's really the only form of content-based speech restrictions that are permissible by the federal government. But this sort of content-based restriction, this part of viewpoint discrimination, um, would not be allowed if the Texas Sons of the Confederate Veterans were correct. The state of Texas sort of defends themselves, arguing that this is government speech, and when the government speaks, it's not discrimination. The government chooses to speak in whatever fashion it wishes, and if it chooses not to promote something, um, that's its choice, and nor can the government be compelled to speak. So there are two general issues in this case. First, are license plates governmental speech and therefore immune from viewpoint neutrality? Um, and does denying the Confederate flag's appearance on a license plate engage in viewpoint discrimination? So it's a very close case, but the division in this case in terms of what justices vote for what is odd. So it's a 5-4 decision. But the majority opinion includes the four most liberal justices and also the most conservative justice. So the judges in the majority are Justice Sotomayor, Ginsburg, Kagan, Breyer, and then Justice Thomas. That's usually not a pairing we see on the United States Supreme Court. And so what they say, with Justice Breyer writing the majority opinion, is that when government license plates are a form of governmental speech because they have to be sanctioned by the state. In fact, the state's name appears on them. And citing a precedent from earlier on, Pleasant City Grove, which a case that involved religious monuments being placed in public areas, public parks. They followed the same sort of fact pattern analysis and came to the conclusion that no, this is governmental speech, and therefore it shields itself from any claims of viewpoint discrimination because you simply can't compel the government to speak. And when the government does speak, it can't be held accountable for discriminating against a viewpoint. Now, there's a really important dissent here, and that dissent is from Justice Alito. It should be noted that Justice Alito is actually the author of the Pleasant City Grove case. So he's the one who authored a majority opinion, which this majority opinion bases itself upon. And he argues that since the state of Texas has a cajillion vanity license plates, no rational observer would look at a license plate from the state of Texas and think that that was the government speaking. They would think that that was the individual speaking. Therefore, Texas, in rejecting this design in particular, but not the myriad of others, has very clearly engaged in viewpoint discrimination. But like I said, this is a 5-4 majority in which Justice Thomas also signs on. And in this case, sort of sets down the precedent that the government, first off, can't be compelled to speak. You can't mandate the government say something. And also the government, when it is speaking, doesn't need to worry as much about the idea of viewpoint discrimination because the government itself can be selective in what it says. It's speaking as an entity, and it's not speaking on behalf of anyone else. It's speaking on behalf of itself.